There is a growing disconnect between what political leaders say about the economy and what people actually feel in their daily lives. A clear majority of Americans now believe that the country is moving in the wrong economic direction, and that sentiment is no longer abstract. It shows up in grocery bills, energy costs, rent, medical expenses, and the quiet decisions people make to delay doctor visits, skip vacations, or cut back on basic comforts. This gap between official optimism and lived experience has become one of the most politically dangerous fault lines in the country. Welcome to Political Plot, where we cut through the noise to reveal the power plays shaping American politics. Today we're diving into how political power starts to crack when economic reality collides with perception, and why no amount of messaging, charisma, or institutional control can fully override what people feel in their own wallets. At its core, this is about how affordability, trust, and lived experience quietly decide elections long before votes are cast. Donald Trump has repeatedly tried to frame concerns about affordability as exaggerated or even fabricated, suggesting that critics are inventing a crisis for political gain. At the same time, he has been sent out by his own administration to promote economic success stories. Falling fuel prices, rising markets, and signs of strength, that tension is becoming harder to manage. On the one hand, some costs have eased, particularly at the gas pump. On the other hand, the broader cost of living continues to rise, especially for essentials like food and electricity. For families already stretched thin, those increases matter far more than stock market headlines. This contradiction matters because it echoes the very argument that helped Trump return to power. Joe Biden was widely perceived as losing control of inflation, speaking in macroeconomic terms while voters felt left behind. Job numbers and infrastructure projects meant little to people who felt poorer month after month. That perception proved fatal. Now, a similar charge is beginning to stick to Trump. Even if parts of the economy look strong on paper, elections are not decided on spreadsheets. They are decided in kitchens, at checkout counters, and when bills come due. That brings us to the looming midterm elections, where control of Congress is at stake. If Republicans lose either chamber, Trump would remain president, but his agenda would stall. Attention would immediately shift to blame, internal conflict, and positioning for the next presidential race. The strategic question facing Republicans is whether to center those elections around Trump himself or to localize races and distance candidates from Washington. Traditionally, parties try to make midterms about local achievements. This time, Trump's inner circle is signaling a different approach. His chief of staff has openly argued that Trump should be front and center, effectively turning the midterms into a national referendum on him. The logic is simple. Trump energizes voters who otherwise stay home. When he is absent from the ballot, turnout drops among his most loyal supporters. By putting his name, image, and message everywhere, the party hopes to recreate presidential-level enthusiasm. It is a bold strategy, but also a risky one, especially when economic dissatisfaction is rising. Polling suggests that many Americans now associate their financial strain with Trump's policies, particularly tariffs that have driven up costs across supply chains. These are the kinds of pocketbook issues that reliably shape voting behavior. If voters feel worse off, charisma alone may not save incumbents. Trump's strength has always been his ability to dominate attention and defy expectations, but even that has limits when economic anxiety becomes personal. Complicating matters is Trump's communication style. When pressed to address affordability, he often swings between claiming prices are falling and dismissing the entire issue as a political invention. That inconsistency undermines credibility. You cannot argue that economic pain is both solved and imaginary at the same time. Voters tend to forgive bad news more easily than they forgive denial of their lived reality. This tension was on display during a recent rally where Trump attempted to reassure voters while making remarks that landed as tone deaf, suggesting that families do not need as many consumer goods, especially in the run-up to the holidays, reinforced the impression of distance between leadership and everyday life. When combined with Trump's visible closeness to tech billionaires and corporate elites, the messaging risked reinforcing an image of a president more comfortable with wealth than with struggle. In earlier administrations, aides might have stepped in to soften or redirect such remarks. This time, many of those guardrails are gone. Trump is surrounded largely by loyalists who amplify rather than challenge his instincts. That dynamic makes strategic correction harder, not easier. Even longtime allies like Steve Bannon have warned that appearing out of touch with working class concerns is politically dangerous. Beyond economics, the institutional landscape is also shifting in ways that could shape future elections. The Supreme Court, now dominated by conservative justices appointed during Trump's first term, is hearing cases that would significantly expand presidential authority. One case could allow the president to fire leaders of independent regulatory agencies at will, dismantling long-standing protections designed to keep those bodies neutral. Another case could further weaken limits on campaign spending, effectively allowing massive sums of money to flow directly through political parties to favored candidates. Taken together, these developments point toward a consolidation of power that benefits incumbents with wealthy backers. Regulatory agencies that once acted as checks could become political tools. Campaign finance rules that once limited corruption could become hollow. The independence of institutions designed to protect voters from manipulation would erode, all under the banner of executive authority and free speech. These legal shifts intersect uncomfortably with Trump's broader political strategy. Control over data, oversight, and enforcement shapes not just policy outcomes, but public perception itself. If the mechanisms that produce economic statistics or police campaign finance lose independence, trust in official information weakens. That uncertainty creates fertile ground for narratives driven by power rather than evidence. At the same time, cultural battles are intensifying. Immigration enforcement agencies have embraced provocative messaging, repurposing pop culture imagery to celebrate arrests and deportations. That strategy has sparked backlash from artists and politicians alike, leading to sharp satirical counterattacks from Democratic figures. These exchanges may seem trivial, but they shape the emotional climate of politics, reinforcing identities and deepening divisions. What ties all of this together is a sense that American politics is entering a more openly transactional phase. Economic anxiety, institutional power, cultural symbolism, and money are converging. Trump's ability to thrive in this environment depends on whether his personal brand can continue to override material concerns. History suggests that charisma can carry a leader far, but not indefinitely. When voters feel squeezed, symbolism loses power. The next year will test whether Trump's political gravity still bends reality around him, or whether economic pressure finally pulls him back to earth. Midterm elections often punish the party in power. Turning them into a referendum on a polarizing president could either energize supporters or accelerate backlash. What is clear is that affordability, not ideology, will sit at the center of that verdict, and unlike slogans or rallies, grocery bills do not lie.